Welcome to Real English Voices. I'm Tom.
And I am Maria. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode where we don't just teach you English, we talk about life, communication, and how to find your true voice in a new language.
It is great to have you here. You know, Ria, today we're going to talk about something that I think almost every single English learner struggles with. It's a huge burden, heavy on their shoulders.
Oh, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Is it grammar? Because grammar usually feels like a heavy backpack full of rocks.
Actually, it is not grammar today. It's something deeper. It's the pressure to be fancy. It's the idea that you have to use big, complicated words to sound intelligent or fluent. Our topic today is don't overdo it. Simple English is enough.
Wow, that is such a relief to hear, honestly, even for me. I remember when I was first learning a second language, I thought I had to sound like a professor or a poet to be taken seriously. If I used simple words, I felt like a child.
Exactly. That's the trap. We think that complexity equals fluency. We think that if we say, I am exhausted instead of I am tired, we're better speakers. And sure, having a big vocabulary is nice, but it's not the goal. The goal is connection.
Connection. That is a beautiful word. You know, I've noticed that when students try too hard to use difficult idioms or long words, they actually lose that connection. They get stuck in their heads. They stop looking at the person they're talking to and start looking into their own brain for a dictionary definition.
That's a perfect description. They disconnect from the moment. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who is trying so hard to sound smart that you actually cannot understand what they're saying?
Yes, I have. It feels unnatural. It feels like they're performing, not communicating. I remember once I was listening to a student try to describe his weekend. He wanted to say he relaxed at home, but he tried to use the word tranquil. He kept stumbling over it. He said, it was very tranquility. It was awkward. If he had just said it was a quiet weekend, we would have kept talking happily.
That's the perfect example. He sacrificed the flow of the conversation for a fancy word. And the irony is, native speakers usually prefer the simple version. If you listen to me and Ria talking right now, we're mostly using the top 1,000 or 2,000 most common words in English. We aren't using Shakespearean language.
No, we are definitely not Shakespeare. But Tom, why do you think we have this fear? Why are we so afraid of being simple?
I think it comes from school. In school, we get better grades for writing long essays with complex sentence structures. We're trained to think that simple is bad and complex is good. But real life is not a classroom. Real life is about speed, emotion, and clarity.
Clarity is king. I love that. If I say something and you understand it instantly, I have succeeded. If I say something and you have to pause and decode it, I have failed, even if my grammar was perfect.
Precisely. You know, there's a famous saying in the design world, less is more. I think that applies to English, too. When you strip away the unnecessary big words, your true personality shines through. You stop worrying about the language and start worrying about the message.
And that's when the magic happens. When you stop worrying about the words, you start smiling more. Your body language relaxes. You actually become more fluent because you aren't pausing to search for that rare word you learned 3 years ago.
It's about confidence. Simple English spoken with confidence sounds 10 times better than advanced English spoken with hesitation.
That is so true. Confidence changes the rhythm of your voice. It changes how people perceive you. Tom, before we dive deeper into how to actually practice this simplicity, I think we should pause for a moment. We've used a few interesting words in this first part of our chat.
That's a great idea. Let's review 3 words that might have been a little difficult in the last few minutes.
Okay, the first word is complexity.
Complexity. This means the state of having many parts or being difficult to understand. It's the opposite of simplicity.
The second word is burden.
Burden. a heavy load that you carry. It can be a physical load, like a heavy bag, or an emotional load, like worry or stress.
And the third word is decode.
Decode. This means to translate or figure out the meaning of something that is confusing. So, listeners, here's my question for you based on this section. Do you ever feel a burden when you try to speak English because you're trying to be too perfect? Think about that as we continue. That is a very important question. I hope our listeners are being honest with themselves right now. Let's get back to the conversation. I want to tell you a story, Ria.
Oh, I love story time. Go ahead.
A few years ago, I was traveling in a country where I didn't speak the language very well. I was hungry, and I found a small street food stall. I wanted to ask if the food was spicy because I cannot handle very spicy food.
Oh no, that is a dangerous situation for you.
It really was. Now, I had a phrase book. I could have looked up the grammatically correct, polite, complex way to ask, "Excuse me, sir, could you please inform me regarding the spice level of this particular dish?"
But by the time you found that sentence, the shop might have closed.
Exactly. So I just looked at the man, pointed at the food, made a scared face, and said, "Fire? No fire?"
Fire? No fire? That is hilarious. And did it work?
It worked perfectly. He laughed so hard, he understood exactly what I meant. He shook his head and said, "No fire. Good, good." And he gave me the best meal I had on that trip. We connected because I was willing to be simple and look a little bit silly.
That is such a great example. You used one word, fire, and it communicated your fear, your preference, and your question all at once. If you had tried to be perfect, you might have missed that moment of laughter with him.
Right. And that interaction taught me that people are not judging your grammar. They're judging your intent. They want to help you. When you use simple English, you invite people in. You make it easy for them to talk to you.
I think this also applies to how we express our feelings. Sometimes students want to write these long, elaborate love letters or messages to friends, but think about the most powerful sentences in the English language.
Like what?
I love you. I am sorry. Help me. Thank you. These are tiny sentences, but they carry the most weight. You don't need to say, "My heart is overwhelmed with an abundance of affection for your being." That sounds like a robot wrote it.
It sounds like a bad romance novel. Just saying, "I love you" is so much stronger. It is raw. It is real.
So why do we doubt ourselves? Is it because we compare ourselves to native speakers in movies?
I think so. We watch movies where the characters have scripted lines. They have writers who spend months making them sound clever and witty. But in real life, native speakers say and use the word like way too much. We repeat ourselves. We use simple words. If you compare your real speaking to a movie script, you will always feel inadequate.
That is a very unfair comparison. We need to compare ourselves to real humans. You know, I tell my students to listen to interviews, not the news, but interviews where two people are just chatting. You will hear how simple the language really is.
That is great advice. Interviews or podcasts like this one. We're just talking. We aren't reading a script. We're reacting to each other. And because of that, we naturally choose the easiest path to get our point across.
The easiest path. I like that visualization. Imagine you're in a forest. You want to get to the other side. You can try to chop down the thick trees and climb over the rocks. That's the complex English path. Or you can just walk on the clear dirt path that's already there. That's simple English. Both get you to the destination, but one leaves you exhausted and scratched up.
And the other one lets you enjoy the walk. That's the key. Learning a language should be enjoyable. If you're constantly stressing about vocabulary, you're suffering.
Suffering is not a good study strategy. I want to ask you something, Tom. What about professional situations? Many of our listeners use English for work. They might think, well, simple English is fine for street food, but I need to sound professional in a meeting.
That is a valid concern. But I would argue that even in business, simple is better. In the business world, time is money. If you send an email that's 3 paragraphs long and full of jargon, people are going to be annoyed. They want the bullet points. They want the summary.
That is true. The best bosses I have ever had were the ones who gave clear, direct instructions. They didn't hide behind big words.
Exactly. Being concise, which means saying a lot with few words, is a high-level skill. It shows you respect the other person's time. So saying, I disagree because of the budget is much more professional than saying, my perspective regarding this financial allocation aligns with a negative trajectory.
Oh my goodness, my head hurts just listening to that second sentence.
Mine too, and I said it.
Okay, Tom, we have been chatting for a while again. I think we have dropped a few more vocabulary gems that we should clarify for our listeners before we move on.
Right. Let's do our second check-in. What words stood out to you in this section?
The first one is intent.
Intent. This is a noun. It means your intention or what you plan to do or mean. It is the purpose behind your action.
The next word is inadequate.
Inadequate. This means not good enough, feeling like you don't have the quality or ability that is needed.
And the last one is jargon.
Jargon. These are special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group and are difficult for others to understand, like business jargon or medical jargon.
So, here is my question for you now. Have you ever stayed quiet in a conversation or a meeting because you felt your vocabulary was inadequate? I want you to really think about a specific time that happened.
That is a tough question, but remembering those moments helps us grow. Okay, Ria, let's talk about the solution. We have told everyone that simple is good, but how do they actually do it? How do they stop the habit of overcomplicating things?
Well, the first step is to slow down. Usually, when we panic, we try to speed up and our brain grabs the first complicated thought it can find. If you take a breath, you give your brain a second to find the simple word.
Breathing is so underrated. It resets your brain. I also think people should practice paraphrasing.
Paraphrasing? Explain that a bit more.
It means saying the same thing in a different way. It's a great exercise. Take a complicated sentence, maybe something you read in a newspaper, and try to explain it to a 5-year-old child.
I love that exercise. Explain it to a 5-year-old. So if the newspaper says, the economy is experiencing a significant downturn, you would say,
People have less money now.
boom, simple, clear. And honestly, it hits harder emotionally. People have less money now feels more serious than significant downturn.
It really does. Another tip I have is to accept that you will make mistakes. Part of why we try to use big words is to hide our grammar mistakes. We think a big word will distract the listener. But it's better to say, I go to store yesterday, even though the grammar is wrong, than to say nothing at all.
Yes, the message was delivered. We understood you went to the store. Mission accomplished. I also tell my students to focus on verbs. English is a verb-heavy language. If you know your basic verbs, get, have, do, make, take, you can say almost anything.
Phrasal verbs are great for this too. Native speakers love phrasal verbs. We usually don't say extinguish the fire. We say put out the fire. Put out is simple. Extinguish is fancy.
But phrasal verbs can be scary for learners. There are so many of them.
They can be, but you only need a few common ones. And again, don't overdo it. If you forget the phrasal verb, just use the simple verb. If you can't remember put out, just say stop the fire. It works.
Stop the fire. It works perfectly. It's all about being resourceful. Use the tools you have in your pocket. Don't wish for the tools you left at home.
I like that analogy. Be resourceful. You know, I have a friend who's learning Spanish. He's at an intermediate level. He told me that his best conversations happen when he's had a little bit of, well, when he's very tired.
When he's tired? Why?
Because when he's tired, his brain is too lazy to translate complicated thoughts, so he just speaks. He doesn't filter. He just uses the first words that come out, and he finds that he speaks much more fluently.
That makes so much sense. His internal editor is asleep. That internal editor, the little voice that says, no, that word isn't good enough, is our biggest enemy. We need to tell that editor to take a vacation.
Send the editor to the beach. We don't need him. We need the speaker.
Tom, I want to touch on the emotional side of this one more time. I think overdoing it comes from a place of insecurity. We feel like we aren't enough just as we are.
That is deep, but true. When we learn a new language, we lose a bit of our identity. In our native language, we are funny, smart, sarcastic, intelligent. In the new language, we feel like toddlers, so we try to overcompensate with big words to prove we are still smart.
Yes, that is it. We are trying to prove our intelligence. But here's the secret, listeners. Your intelligence shows in your eyes, in your smile, and in your ability to listen. It doesn't show in the length of your words.
If you are kind, people will think you are smart. If you are curious, people will think you are interesting. You don't need a thesaurus to be a good person.
A thesaurus. I haven't used one of those in years. For those who don't know, a thesaurus is a book that lists synonyms, or words with the same meaning. It is a dangerous tool for learners.
It is dangerous because a thesaurus will tell you that home and residence are the same. But if you invite me to your residence for dinner, I'm going to wear a tuxedo. If you invite me to your home, I will wear jeans. The nuance is different.
That is such a funny way to put it. Simple words usually carry the warmest feeling. Home is warm. Residence is cold.
So stick to the warm words. Stick to the words that feel natural in your mouth. If a word feels like a rock in your mouth, spit it out. Don't say it.
Spit it out. I am going to remember that. Tom, we're getting close to the end of our chat, and I think we have covered some really helpful ground. But before we wrap up, we have one more set of words to review.
Let's do it. Check in number 3. What do we have?
First word, overcompensate.
Overcompensate. This means to try too hard to correct a problem, often ending up with a different problem, like using big words to hide that you're nervous.
Second word, resourceful.
Resourceful. Being good at finding ways to solve problems, using what you have effectively.
And the third word, nuance.
Nuance. A very small difference in meaning, sound, or feeling, like the difference between home and residence.
So here's my final question for this episode. Are you willing to let go of the need to be perfect and just focus on being understood? It's a scary step, but are you ready to take it?
That's the ultimate question. Letting go of perfection is freedom.
It really is. You know, Tom, I hope our listeners realize that their voice is unique. It doesn't matter if their accent is heavy or their vocabulary is small. Their story is what matters.
Absolutely. Your story, your ideas, your feelings, those are the gold. The language is just the truck that carries the gold. Don't spend all your time painting the truck and forget to load the gold.
Oh, I love that. Don't paint the truck, load the gold. That should be on a t-shirt.
Maybe we should make Real English Voices t-shirts. But seriously, to everyone listening, we want you to try something this week. We challenge you.
Yes, a challenge. Go into a conversation, maybe with a native speaker or a fellow learner, and try to speak as simply as possible. Don't try to impress them, just try to connect with them. See how it feels.
Notice if you feel lighter. Notice if the other person smiles more. I guarantee you will see a difference.
And don't worry about sounding basic. Basic is the foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation.
Well said, Ria. Learning English is a journey, not a race. You don't need to sprint with heavy weights on your back. Drop the weights. Walk comfortably. You will go further.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. We really hope this conversation helps you feel a little less pressure and a little more joy in your learning.
We will be back soon with more conversations, more tips, and more real English voices. Until then, keep it simple.
And keep talking. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.